All right, lucky to be here with my friend Fabio. Fabio, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much. Excited for this, Mike.
Yeah, for sure. So like when somebody asks, "What do you do?" which is like not a question I ever ask, but just to sort of give people that are listening like a sense of sort of who you are and what your background is. What do you usually say?
Yeah, it just depends on who I'm talking to. So if we're talking in the personal brand space, I'll say basically I'm a finance guy. I'm a wealth building personality, if you will, somebody who's trying to share that message of anybody can build wealth on any income. They can become financially free. And it's more about math than anything else. It's not about a high income or something like that, although that helps. It doesn't necessarily guarantee that. So that's kind of the background of what I'm all about. But there's also this idea of a little bit more broader, holistic wealth that I've kind of touched upon in the past couple of months. And it's kind of been a core pillar of what I like to talk about more often. But as a person, obviously a family man, a wife, two kids, two dogs, craziness, life. There's lots of things going on. But I believe that you should follow your passions and kind of get the most out of life. So I like to weave that into my content as well. So it's kind of all over the place. I'm a marketer by trade. I've been doing it for many, many years. So that's more of traditional consumer packaged goods or CPG brand marketing. Started my career in finance, have a finance degree. Thought I was going to be a personal financial planner, but pivoted to marketing. So in a roundabout way,
Awesome.
that's who I am.
Yeah. Yeah. So well, and it sounds like you've really sort of managed to weave those into what you're doing now, right? You've got the
Yeah.
background in finance, and then you sort of stepped into this marketing space, and you've worked to some degree, I think, at the intersection of the two. But if you could, can you walk us through like the steps of your career that essentially led you here, and then maybe
Sure.
we'll jump off from there.
Yeah. So going into actually before college, I kind of got the finance investing bug in 11th grade. We had this like stock market challenge, picking stocks, et cetera. And I fell in love with it. I don't want to date myself, but back in the day, you pull up the newspaper, look at the ticker symbols and try to understand what that stock was, et cetera, read about it. Fell in love with One Up on Wall Street by Peter Lynch, how to analyze stocks, etc. Thought I was going to be like a fund manager. So someone who was picking stocks like Peter Lynch at Fidelity. I went to school in Boston for my finance degree. Thought I was going to be a fund manager. Came across the career of a personal financial planner. So I did an internship with one of the big firms in personal financial planning and did that for 2 years at college and thought, hey, I want to be a financial planner. I realized back then in the way in my, 20-year-old brain that it was more about sales than it was about personal financial planning and helping people. Although many financial planners and fiduciaries do that. So I was like, it's not for me. It was a tough job market. Coming out of school, I was lucky to get a job at Pepsi in a finance field or finance area. But while I was there, I fell in love with marketing. So I went to school at night, got my MBA. 3 years later, jumped ship and got a job at a small food company. And then that started my career into the marketing field. Several years into that, I didn't go through my childhood, et cetera, but I have always loved to read. I've always loved to write. So I started, this was pre Amazon Kindle, writing ebooks, one page landing pages, selling direct to customers, ClickBank, PayPal, all of that fun stuff, learning very basic HTML, creating sites, newsletters, 20,000 person email lists a couple of times. It was just a wild and crazy world while I was doing my day job. So it was not easy. And that was, I'd say, about 10 to 15 years ago. And now, as of 2023, I'm back in the game.
That's awesome. So you've actually been at this a while, right? So you've
Yeah.
been essentially like side hustling to some degree where you were, so 10,
Yeah.
15 years ago, you're learning the HTMLs, you're doing this sort of newsletter space. The tools
Hmm.
are like way more primitive than they
Oh my
are
God.
now.
No code and easy, way, way different now. Yeah. I'd say I did it for about 5 years, 2003. So it's coming up on 20 years. I published two books on Amazon in the finance space, The Secrets of Wealth and The Wealthy Pauper. Wanted to educate people on the stuff I was learning at that time. So I was learning it. I wanted to put it into print. That's how you did it. Kindle wasn't out yet back then. And from there, started into this kind of info products, infopreneur world. I had a couple of friends that were into the copy space, the internet marketing world, some of the bigger names you would recognize. I was kind of going into those seminars back in the day. I did that for about 5 years and I kind of broke even and I was burnt out. And I decided I'm going to just double down on my career. I can make more money and it's less hassle. I can focus on my family and building a family by just focusing on the job. And so that's what I did for a number of years. Always thought about getting back into the game. And then when COVID hit, had a lot more free time on my hands and rediscovered Twitter. And then finance Twitter, div twit, etc., and got into the dividend marketing, dividend investing world. So that kind of just started. So back in 2020, and then I discovered the personal branding world at the end of last year, 2022.
That's awesome. Now, at that point, did you have because right now, I mean, your Twitter following's really been gaining steam, and you're growing, you're scaling like really fast.
Yeah.
But you've really sort of been at this like a while, where you're writing books a long number of years ago,
Yeah.
And then sort of hop back in the game. But like, did you have a pre-existing Twitter following like around 2020, 2022
So
when you got
the
more serious?
yeah. So how I explain it to people is I'm in marketing. So back in 2009, I think when I started my account, it was mainly because of work and like we would go to these offsites and you'd have to have a Twitter handle and all that. Tim Ferriss is the first person I had heard about it and Gary Vaynerchuk talking about it. So set up my account then, but we were pitched, to spend money on Twitter, or it was like the hot new social media back then. So I joined a lot of work followers, etc. But I basically had a dead following list, a couple of work colleagues, things of that nature. So I think I had about like 3,300 people or 3,200, something like that at the beginning of this year that were following me. But I barely tweeted. I was more of a stalker kind of consumer of content versus a producer. And so I started the pivot in February of this year, 2023, to like actively start, promoting and tweeting and learning the game, if you will.
That's awesome, and I think inspirational to people too, right? That you've been able to start in February and since like gain enough steam where, and just to give some context for people, you've over doubled your follower count since then. Like
Yeah.
I think you're somewhere in the sort of 7,000, 8,000. Like you've got a captive market, and whatever you decide to sort of do next, you can really sort of leverage that following to do it. What
Mm-hmm.
have been your lessons in terms of like that personal brand, right? Like how have you approached tweeting? How have you approached like content creation? It sounds like you've really sort of focused in and found a bit more of that sort of niche. But how has that journey been, and how have you really sort of approached it?
Yeah, it's fits and starts at the beginning and kind of just trying to understand what is right and what's wrong. You're hearing conversations or you're reading tweets and watching videos or I listen to a lot of podcasts, trying to understand what it actually takes to grow. So what really tweaked it, and it's kind of probably a cliche answer, are Dan Coe at the end of last year and Justin Welsh started coming across their content. I had come across Dan Coe's content in 2020 when I remember him talking about walking and working out. And then all of a sudden he's talking about making millions. And I'm like, what the heck just happened here? Like, it's like, what's going on? So that's kind of just a rabbit hole. In February, I took his solopreneur sprint cohort. I said, you know what, let me try this. I have some time on my hand. Let me learn about this. Like, what does it take? Because I had been tweeting a little bit in the January, February range, no traction. And I'm like, all right, let me just dump a little money in. Let me try this out. So what I like to say is I'm a student of the game. I love to write and I like to learn. And so I'm pretty good at like reading tweets and going, oh, okay, I see what he or she is doing there. I see, the copy hooks and stuff there. I then decided to go all in on Twitter in April, signed up for a cohort. Alex Roy, or Alexandra is his name. Signed up for his cohort. It's been fantastic. He's like an underrated coach basically in the field, sharing the insight tips, etc. So I just learned a little bit more and then just got into it. I learned a little bit of the tactics people talk about, etc. I still don't fully do everything you're supposed to do and DMing people and hopping on Zooms and things of that nature. I'm more of an introvert. So I'm playing the game my way. But then just trying out a bunch of things. Right now, I'm in the middle of a 15-day, thread writing contest, or not contest, but like a challenge, and so that's been great with Goggin, who set that up. So like, it's just having fun, writing, learning, seeing what works, leveraging a couple of tools here and there to just see the results. And like you said, it's been pretty good. I'm very happy with the growth that I've had.
There's a ton in there, and I appreciate you sharing that
Sorry.
because there's, I think, some really sort of deep. No, so much like good stuff that you just shared. I think a few things. I think one, that Dan Co course in
Yeah.
February. I That's where I got started with sort of when I had like no followers, and it's sort of just been a great journey. I can't tell you how many people I've talked about that took that same cohort that were just
Yeah.
inspired and that has since have been doing it. I mean, talk about ROI, right? Like
Yeah.
$150 course, like, the
Yep.
amount of connections and like an inspiration and like good content that has actually come from that is just like absolutely
Mhm.
incredible. Um, it sounds like you
Yeah.
were also sort of like really studying the game and trying to sort of see like what works, what sort of formats are useful, those types
Mhm.
of pieces. Like, what have been like your big takeaways in terms of like, here are the things that I'm going to focus on a daily basis to like move the needle a little bit.
Yeah. Um, and it's hard because it's tough to do daily. And they're a little bit not cool right now, but threads have grown my following list by a ton. Every single time I have a banger or a really great quote unquote viral thread, it's just the eyeballs get on it. So that's been one thing that I've seen, and that's why when this 15-day challenge came up, I was like, all right, let me redo it. It does take a lot more time and effort. So that's definitely one thing that's helped. Having a crew of people that I'm interacting with, engaging with, whether it's via DMs in Twitter or Discord, and doing that type of thing where we're pumping each other up and like, hey, I'm down today, you're up, like, what's going on, like, and like sharing learnings and things of that nature. That's been great too. So that's it. Like, a lot of times it comes down to like a couple of simple things. There's the, consistency, 2 to 3 tweets, 5 tweets a day, commenting, not necessarily on big accounts, but accounts your size, etc. So it's like, it's the basic stuff. And what I was going to say at the end of that cohort, the solopreneur one, not everybody's still doing this. So there is a law of attrition going on and things like that, and it happens. And so, if you're in it to win it, stay consistent. And like I said, I've been saying to myself and whoever asks, not that you have asked just yet, I'm giving myself to the end of the year to make a go of this, to monetize a little bit. I'm not necessarily in it for the money, but I don't want an expensive hobby, is how I'm thinking about it. And I want to provide a tremendous amount of value to people, and then potentially monetize, as I say, with tiny little ebooks, which isn't big ticket coaching and all that other stuff, which I probably could do. I'm just, my headspace is into a sustainable business that fits my life, and that's how I approach it. I want to write and educate more than talk about selling and doing that type of stuff. So that's where my mindset is.
That's super cool. And really what I heard in there is like you're getting like a lot more ROI out of threads. So it's taking like more time up front. But by doing that, you're sort of maximizing the actual time that you're spending because you're getting sort of more ROI on those individual things. You're staying consistent with that sort of 3 to 5 tweets a day. And then the last thing I really liked is you're almost approaching like a team sport, right? Where it's just like, I've
Yeah,
got this crew, I'm lifting people up, I'm supporting them, but at the same time, I'm like drafting off their energy when I'm needed and sort of supporting them
yeah,
and getting the sort of reciprocal benefits from doing both.
yeah. Social media, Twitter, whatever you want to say, is a multiplayer sport. It's not a solopreneur. Solo. Oops, there's a Freudian slip. Solo sport, solo player. It can be a solopreneur game, but yeah, it's just like one of those things. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Yeah, it completely is. And I feel like one mistake that I've seen so many people make, and I know I was sort of guilty of this when I first started, it was just like, you're commenting on the big accounts. You kind of get the macro strategy because you pick up advice here and there, but you spend so much
Mhm.
time like commenting on bigger accounts or trying to sort of do things, but you're not getting eyeballs on it because you don't really sort of have your own sort of like niche of other people that are sort of doing it, and you miss out on so many benefits of like really sort of interacting with people your size, which ends up being like both more fun and beneficial.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That like because some of the advice you always see is like comment on the big accounts, etc. I tried that for a hot minute and it was exhausting. You set up a notification for a creator or someone that you like, and then you try to be the first commenter or something like that or provide value. By the time you hit tweet or send, there's 80 comments on it, so it's just kind of like, okay, that might not work there. So I just
Yeah,
kind of pivoted from trying that game and just realized I'm just going to comment on people who are providing great value, who I think I want to be in my Dream 100 or my crew, and then just interact with those folks.
definitely. And you touched on an important concept there. Can you explain the Dream 100 and how you've sort
Oh
of
yeah,
approached that as a, yeah,
yeah, no worries. So it comes from Chet Holmes. I think it's Ultimate Sales Machine that Russell Brunson kind of has taken and popularized. And the way Chet did it, I think it was 133. It was more than 100, but he was in the magazine world and trying to sell like ad space. So he had his Dream 100 customer list, and he would basically call them every week, send them stuff, cards, holiday stuff, etc. And then at the end of it, like he finally got the first one to advertise with the magazine, and then the second, and then the fourth, and the 12th, etc. So it was just honing in on a core target and saying, these are my Dream 100. If I had these 100 customers, life is amazing. And so Chet, wrote about it. His daughter has taken over the business now after his passing. Russell Brunson popularized it in like his Dream 100 when he was starting out with like ClickFunnels, et cetera. Like these are the top 100 that I need to bring on, or these are the 100 affiliates that I would love to promote my stuff. And so now it's being repurposed into the creator space or the Twitter space for creators, all about, okay, who are the Dream 100 creators or people that you would love to that follow you and interact with your stuff? There you go. And so you can create a list in Twitter, and then you're basically following and engaging with their stuff. And the hope is that they're going to follow you.
yeah. No, it's such a great strategy, and I think like one that so many people I think don't sort of latch on, like have to sort of like do the wrong way before they eventually sort of find it, and then, but when you do it, I mean, you're interacting with the audiences that you want. You're finding people that are sort of in and around these sort of niches, and I'd argue too that it helps you sort of like publicly sort of like find your brand, right, and find that sort of unique competitive advantage because you're growing and you're interacting as you're doing it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And you're just, it's almost like, all right, I want to associate with these people. So it's not necessarily you're selling them. That's the original purpose of the Dream 100. This is more of like, I want to be in this circle and associated with these people. So I'm going to interact with their stuff. And then hopefully they're going to be following me one day.
Exactly. Exactly. You had mentioned earlier your your sort of niche and a lot of the content that you're doing is sort of in this sort of personal finance space and
Mhm.
helping people essentially sort of take control and autonomy over their personal finances. But you also mentioned something really interesting, which is like how to sort of see wealth in a more holistic space. Can
Yeah.
you elaborate on that concept a bit?
Yeah. And it came to me because I was reading a story about Tom Cruise, and everybody was like Mission Impossible 2 was coming out, and Maverick, and he's jacked and great shape, does his own stunts, and he's 60 years old and looks like a 20-year-old and everything. But the line was like his daughter Suri doesn't talk to him or something like that. And I don't want to spread rumors if that's not the case or whatever, but then it just started a whole thing in my head of like a waterfall of like, oh my god, like, oh yeah, there's a couple of people we know that are divorced 4 or 5 times or have kids with 4 or 5 people, and that type of thing, and they're divorced or they're cheating and they're overweight and they're not in good shape or they seem depressed. And it was just like, these are billionaires and millionaires. Like, you would think that they'd be set and happy and all that stuff. And I just realized that, like, money ain't wealth. And that was the phrase. And that's why it's on my Twitter profile. It's like, and it's really, money alone isn't wealth, to say it properly, because ain't a word, right? It's the proper grammar. But so it just became a thing of like, money ain't wealth. And I just went down this rabbit hole of like, what is actually wealth? And wealth, money is only like, 20% of it. And so there's four other areas of wealth, and like faith, family, fitness, and fun, and finances is the fifth. And so a lot of people, when they don't have money, they're just obsessed with money and chasing it because they need it. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, they need shelter, they need food, they need the basics, they need a little bit of more comfort. So it's just constantly on their mind. Once you take care of that money equation, hopefully you're saying, okay, now I have a little bit of a breathing room. Let me work on all the other areas of my life. Hey, I'm a little overweight. I'm out of shape. I'm not as healthy as I should be. So let me take care of how I eat, how I sleep, how I work out. My relationships, not just with my family, but my friends and my coworkers, etc. Like, all the relationships in my life, can they be better? Are there any toxic people in my life that I have to cut out? So like, that's the family side. Um, the fitness side talked about, obviously, finances. And then I didn't do this because I was so chasing money and career oriented and then trying to get in shape, but the fun aspect, right? Like, you got to enjoy life. Go to a concert, go for a walk in a park, take up a hobby, hang out with friends, buy experiences, not stuff. So like, all of these things came together, and it's the five areas of wealth, the five pillars, that I just started thinking about more and more and more. And while I'm not a relationship coach or expert or anything like that, and my wife probably, has things to say about me too, it's just being mindful of that. That you should date your spouse, that you should go out, like, you should make time for things, like, you should try to be present when you're with your family or relationships or even meetings. Go to that happy hour, break bread, like, have a lunch physically with coworkers. So it's like all of those areas that just lead to an overall level of happiness, like, that just raises the bar, and you just feel wealthy, grateful and happy for life. But obviously, if the finances are lagging, that's where a lot of people's attention and mindset go to.
I think it's such a fabulous concept, and I love that sort of holistic view for so many reasons. But one of it is, I think there's like so much content on the internet around like how to get rich, and it's like, and there's so much information out there, and there's so many sort of Twitter accounts that I think are really sort of focused on like getting rich. And I think you said something really
Yeah.
smart before, which is like, in a lot of ways, like that's really like a math problem, right? It's like it's fairly simplistic. I've seen you tweet about this. It's like this index funds consistently like over a long period of
Yeah.
time, and that, like, I mean, it's math. It's so simple, but it's so true. And I as somebody that
Right.
started investing like really young and was able to make a big career pivot, I've seen so much sort of benefit from that. That
There's,
strategy. But I think
and
something else
that's,
that you said that was
oh,
like,
go ahead.
oh,
No, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, I think another piece that you said that I thought was like just really, really powerful, or so why I like this approach is like there's so much power in, like, everybody knows that compounding interest, like over the very long term, pays huge dividends. But there's also this like memory dividend idea that you can have, right? And
I love it. Yep.
experiences that you can,
Yep.
yeah, like things that you do in your 20s and 30s and 40s, like also compound. And like the memories, the conversations that you have from them, the social capital that you get from it, the better connections that happen as a result of you doing these things, like those actually sort of compound in their own ways, and sometimes actually
Yeah.
have financial ROI to them attached as well. And so it's like, I
100%.
think a lot more holistic view to have that wealth is this like bigger thing.
Yeah. It's it's buying experiences sometimes instead of like buying stuff. It's doing things, not always that like require money, but doing things that you're going to be talking about for the rest of your life. And so, like, the example, or cliched example, is like backpacking across Europe in your 20s, like right out of college. You're not doing that in your 50s or 40s. I don't care how fit you are. You've got obligations, and maybe your health's not there. So do that in that moment. And sure, you might be sacrificing a summer of work where you could have been making money and paying down your school loans, et cetera, et cetera. But now you're going to be telling your kids and your grandchildren about the summer you went backpacking across Europe, and maybe you met your spouse there, or something like that. Like, who knows? It's running a marathon. It's doing things. It's picking up the guitar and trying to play it and learn it. It's writing that book you've been thinking about forever. Those memory dividends, right? Those are the things that you sit there and you get goosebumps thinking about, and you go, did I live a great life? And you're like, well, I lived pretty well, and you have these not mile markers, but these dividends that you can sit there and say, you can bring up and review, et cetera. It's almost like a collection of experiences in your life that you get to say, wow, that's pretty cool. And more importantly, just not from a selfish standpoint, but doing it with others, like whether it's your crew of friends, et cetera, your family, your coworkers, like the community. And I realized looking back, I'm pretty introverted. I was doing this side hustle thing at lunch at work, for many years. I would just be writing and doing stuff like that, or checking out my net worth and that, versus like staying for lunch or going to happy hour and doing the types of things that maybe I would have had closer bonds with many more people versus just a handful. And so that's the thing that I think about a lot of, like, you know what? There's seasons in life. And so you might as well put yourself out there. It might mean you're spending a little bit of money and you could retire 2 or 3 years later, but now you have like a full vault of like experiences that you can tap into. And sure, you might have been able to retire a couple of years earlier, but to what? An empty life where you didn't live, and that's not it for me. And I'm just trying to spread that message to more and more people.
It's so smart, because I think the best experience in life like have an expiration date, right? And like I know that I've
Yeah.
certainly been somebody that's like that really tries to sort of like stack cash and like let it grow sort of over the long term. But I've been really fortunate to sort of like couple that with like living in Spain for a little period of time, and like
Yeah.
optimizing for these kind of experiences, and like and balancing the two. But it's like it's a really tricky balance to sort of like say like, okay, do I, because you can it's almost impossible to not like over optimize for one versus the other. Have you found
Uh,
like criteria or thinking for like how to decide what's the right, because like I'm just thinking about like the extremes in my family and friend network, right? Of
yeah.
like, you've got the person that's like over optimizing for now versus like your friend that's over optimizing for later. You and I like live in this sort of in between space. So I would
Yeah.
love your take on like, what are the filters that you sort of run through
Yeah.
to make that decision?
For me, and so to be honest, like I've only come to this more recently, and partially as I've reached, like in my hand in a way so people can see it, like as I've reached markers in my life, you reach FI, right? Okay, great. You've financial independence number. Okay, well, what does that mean? And it's like, okay, well, for me, I didn't create and I'll answer the question in a sec. I didn't create a passive income stream and that I could tap into now. Most of it's in retirement accounts, et cetera. That was the model and blueprint I followed. Almost the automatic millionaire was the model. Okay, I understand the math by putting stuff pre-taxed. It's going to grow faster. It's going to be sheltered. And yes, you can put your money in a Roth and pay taxes now, but you're not going to be able to save as much. So I could retire early and start tapping into that. But if you haven't been enjoying the money along the way, or doing things, or set up that passive income along the way and get to enjoy it, it's now a new muscle you got to train. And it sounds crazy, but talk to any like frugal person who's been socking away for a long time. When it comes time to start drawing it down, it's like this weird thing. Like, oh, I'm scared. What's going to happen? Especially if you live through a couple of cycles like I have, where it's like boom, boom, boom. Oh my God, I jumped 20 down 20%, etc. So that's that. So it's hard to shift. What I counsel people to and encourage them to do is create your financial freedom plan, put it in place up to like a certain amount, but then also have the money for expenses, your fun money that you can spend and save and do things. Put that aside and do those things yearly. So for us, we went to Disney this year and we're going to go on another smaller vacation. So we're building that in and we're trying to enjoy the years, because the kids, a couple of years, they might have high school and stuff. They're not going to want to do it. So it's the different seasons of your life, to say, okay, great, I don't have to blow all this money in Disney, but then what are we going to do? The memories that my kids will have and that we will have and we can talk about are just invaluable. And life's too short. All you got to do is hang around people that are 10, 20, 30 years older than you that might be not in the best of shape, and ask them about their, actually I wrote about this yesterday, like about their regrets. And they're going to regret not like doing a different career. They're not going to, the relationships are the most important. So it's not going to make or break you. If you have your financial plan dialed in and you're putting the money aside and you're investing and you're living below your means, you can enjoy life. And the advice, sorry to go on a tangent, that Ramit Sethi has about like conscious spending, just dial it way back in areas you don't care about and then spend lavishly or in places that you do. So if you love shoes, go buy your shoes. I love running sneakers. I'm not going to hold myself back from running sneakers or books. That's what I do. So my wife, it's other areas. My kids, it's certain things. So you can live a good life on any income and not feel like you're denying yourself of everything because you're saving for some time, 40 years from now. Enjoy life now is the critical thing to do. Pursue your hobbies and passions. And lastly, not everything that you enjoy is going to cost a lot of money. There's ways that you can borrow things. There's free options. I love reading. The library is free. So there's lots of different ways of doing great things and having fun and having experiences that don't necessarily cost money. Okay, rant over. But that's the mindset of like,
That
find a
is
way, enjoy
so
it.
so well said. Like
Yeah.
so incredibly well said. And I think there's like this thing that like we forget about, right? It's just like because I think people sort of like picture the travel brochure of like retirement.
Yeah.
And my bias and the sort of like what's running through my head and the privilege that I have is that like I watched both my parents die before they were anywhere near where they
Yeah.
thought they would be, right? Around like this happened much earlier than they thought. So like the experiences that they were sort of like planning for or optimizing for just like didn't happen because that happens. So like I think there's this like, and there's also this thing that I think people sort of do in spending some time with older people is like the reality is like your costs just go down a lot as you get older,
Yeah.
where you don't have the sort of same family expenses. You don't have the same sort of like experiences are just a little bit sort of more like dialed in and different than they
Mhm.
are than if you're sort of optimizing for these sort of like things that you can do in your like 40s
Yeah.
or 50s or whatever. So I think there's this sort of like expiration date thing that like
Yeah. I love it.
none of us are necessarily sort of like optimizing for like in the now. But the way you sort of put that around sort of the balance sort of between the two and how to sort of categorize and appropriately sort of spend money, I think is like really well said.
And by the way, there's lessons learned. I'm thinking of my nephews and things of that nature. And, as they get older, there's a YOLO aspect at a certain age. Like, you're only going to live once. You're only going to have that time for the experience. You're going to blow all your money because you're not making a lot of money. You're going to go to bars. You're going to chase whatever sex you're going to chase, and you're going to have fun. You're going to jet to this place, and you're going to, someone's got a beach house, and you're going to go, and you're going to get into credit card debt and that type of thing. And then you're going to get your act together. You can do all that stuff, but just if you start, even if it's $100, $200 into an index fund, or you start going, okay, I'm going to put the way I did it, I wrote about it in my first book. I had my Vegas fund, and it wasn't for fun. It was for stock picking. So I basically put some money into a brokerage account, and the rest was a retirement account. And so I was like, oh, I want to pick stocks. I want to be Warren Buffett. Great. Small percentage gets to that. And I'm just going to play with that. I'm going to learn. I'm going to do that. The rest is taken care of. And then any excess cash I could save for a down payment on a house, a wedding, a car, etc. Or I could say I'm just going to go on a vacation. I'm going to do this. I'm going to pay for a seminar. I'm going to go to this course. So it's once you get like the basics set up, even at a small level, and then you just start scaling. Because the moment you see that your $100, $200 a month starts growing, and it's like, oh, it grew by more than $100 this month, and I put in 100, and it grew by 200 because of the market. It gets addicting, and then you start adding more to it. You start making more money, and you force yourself to save and invest. And guess what? You're still having fun. And that's the kind of lifestyle that's affordable for anybody if they're living below their means. And then obviously, if you go for growing your income, which is like one of the first steps that I talk about, that makes life a lot easier too.
It's incredibly well said, and I like it's. I almost sort of think of it as like buckets, right? Like, and if you're, for me, like automation took care of some of these different things because I was able to essentially sort of take
Yep,
funds and sort of automatically transfer
that's
them
it.
when paychecks came, and like, it was just like I knew that this was going to this index fund. I knew this was going to the college fund. I knew this is like I knew where all the sort of buckets were happening, but kind of like Ramit talks about, it was just like almost like a sort
100%.
of like quarterly exercise to really sort of like go through and like read everything and like understand the sort of bigger buckets and then like retweak or optimize or whatever. But that sort of, I think, sort of gave a certain freedom to be like, okay, well, this access here can go to vacation or can go
Yeah, you have a
to
separate account.
these more sort of like fun aspects, or I can, right, makes it so much
That's
easier,
it. That's exactly it. And
so much
when
easier.
Ramit, like the diagram, like that's, I had set that up. I wrote an ebook called The Autopilot Millionaire, like, because that was it. It was just like set it and forget it, put it on autopilot. Like your money's coming in, X% goes to the 401k. I had savings accounts, transfers between them. My check was cut up into three different accounts, I think, at the time. And that was it. The big one was the spending, the other one was the savings for long term, and the other one was just let's have some fun, or I can invest it. So it's just doing that, set it on autopilot and go.
Yeah, that's really cool. What are you up to next, and where can people learn a little bit more about you and the great work that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate, like, for me, it's really just home bases on Twitter. I haven't like evolved into like a guru or anything like that, but it's just F Marciano. You can find me on Twitter. I will have a couple of quote unquote lead magnets coming soon. One is Money Ain't Wealth, to explain this concept a little further. I realized I want to flesh it out a little bit more and give a couple of action steps to people. There's a freebie already at 9to5multimillionaire.com. Like, but it's in my Twitter bio. You can just see it. It's just a free ebook, basically, a lot larger than most people give away. That's the main place. I'm going to start a newsletter because I just want to share these financial concepts and concepts about like broader holistic wealth. But it all just starts off at Twitter. F Marciano is where people can find me.
Awesome, and we'll link all that in the show notes. But Fabio, thanks so much for being here. This was an awesome conversation.
Mike, I loved it. Thank you. And I love what you're doing, reaching out and kind of trying to spread like the positive message about, the creator space and, the journey that we're all on, and just excited to share with your audience.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I think, really positive stuff that's happening out there. So thank you.
You got it. Thank you, man.